Yeah, you never know. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to church. I'm glad you're here. You've picked a great day to come because today we're starting a brand new learning unit called Death, Dying, and the Art of Saying Goodbye. It sounds awesome. And I want, if I may, to begin by showing you the profile photos of 6 of the victims from last week's shooting in Orlando. What strikes me about these images is their youthfulness. I detect a certain glint in their eye, a love of life. These people have pleasures they are yet to explore, experiences they are yet to enjoy, discoveries both about themselves and life that they are yet to make. And now they are dead. And for their loved ones, the true horror is not that they died, but that they will stay dead, day after day, after day after day. Their voice is never heard again. Their chair is forever empty. Birthdays, anniversaries, Christmases, someone will always be missing. And the ache of that miss is something that we all experience sooner or later. And yet, curiously, it is something that we are all reluctant to talk about. As a culture, we're just not good at growing old, at dying, and at saying goodbye. The whole subject of loss and grief is difficult to us, and so we would rather not talk about it. So for your benefit and my own, over the next few weeks, we're going to have a very honest look at a very unusual part of the Bible called the Book of Lamentations. As the title suggests, this is one of those parts of the Bible that dares talk about the elephant in your soul. So let's, as they say, light a candle against the dark and get to it. I should say, not that it needs saying, but I should say anyway, that Lamentations is probably the most unread part of the entire Bible. So much so that I would not be surprised if that in the whole of Canada we are the only people thinking about it this morning. And the reason for that unpopularity will become obvious as soon as I begin. So that said, Lamentations, weird book in the Bible. It is a collection of 5 poems. And in each of these poems we're introduced to different characters. The first of whom is the narrator, who begins in verse 1 by saying, "How deserted is the city, once so full of people. How like a widow is she, who once was great among the nations." So the narrator is telling a story, and he says there was this city. And what he wants to convey in the opening line is that the way the city is today is not the way the city was yesterday. To help us understand the pathos of this contrast, let me show you recently taken drone footage from the Syrian city of Aleppo. Have a look at this. Now, the true horror of that footage is not that the city lies in ruins, but rather that those ruins used to be a place where life happened. Children used to play in those streets. In the mornings, old men would gather together in coffee shops to put the world to rights. In the evenings, families would go out for ice cream together. And now those ruins serve as a painful reminder of what was lost. And it is the used-to-bes that make death so unbearable. We used to be happy. We used to make love. We used to laugh. We used to walk the dog together. And now we can't do any of the things we used to do anymore, because all I've got left are photographs and memories. And I'm mainly, of course, applying that imagery to death and grieving, but I could, of course, equally apply it to any loss. When you get old and lose your mobility, when you get laid off and lose your job, when you get dumped and lose your relationship, the thing that hurts you is that things aren't the way they used to be anymore. And the contrast between how things are now and how things used to be is so sore that you feel it like a never-ending kick in the guts. And this opening sentence is packed full of that difficult emotion. She was once so great. She was once so alive. And it's comforting to me that this strange biblical book begins with the English word how. The reason I find that comforting is because this English word is a translation of the Hebrew word ikah. And ikah is one of those words that you say with a catch in your voice. It's one of those expressions of shock that fades into a whisper before you finish it. So a modern example of this word would be, what? Or more accurately, what the fuck? What the fuck? So how's this for a great Sunday in an ancient church? The congregation are gathered, hopefully. The songs have been sung, the offering's been taken. And the priest stands before the people and opens the scriptures and says, today, my friends, we're going to talk about the what the fuzz of life. Today we're going to talk about the emotion that you felt immediately following the trauma that you went through. No hope today, no optimism today, just what the fuck? Let's read on. Bitterly, the narrator says, she weeps at night. Tears are on her cheeks. Among all her lovers, there is none to comfort her. All her friends have betrayed her. They have become her enemies. So what's hard for her, apparently, is that the people she's consistently been there for aren't there for her. And she's going through it alone. Now, of course, to an extent, you always go through things alone. Your pain is your pain. It's your memories, your anger, your fear, your regret, your loss. But my goodness, it helps to have someone, doesn't it? I've been through lots of crap in my life, but I've never had to go through any of it alone. So I feel for this woman very much. Then a few verses later, after the narrator has spoken about all the things she's gone through, the woman herself speaks. And what she says is revealing. She says, pointing her finger, "Is it nothing to you, all you who pass by? Look around and see, is any suffering like my suffering that was inflicted on me, that the Lord has brought in the day of his fierce anger?" When you probably all have this experience. When you experience a major loss, you will find that well-meaning people, in a misguided attempt to distract you from your pain or comfort you in it, will say things that make you feel worse. Things like this: "I know what you're feeling. I understand what you're going through." No, you don't. You know what? Even if you lost a husband, like I lost a husband, even if your child died, like my child died, you still don't know what I'm feeling. But if you would shut up and stop talking about how you're feeling and ask me how I'm feeling, then maybe you'd understand how I'm feeling. Right? I think, and I say this to our shame, I think the worst culprits of this misguided comfort are Christians. Christians, in a very genuine attempt to be consistent with their belief and comforting in traumatic circumstances, often say the most maddening things. Things like this: he's gone to be with Jesus. Oh, okay then. Silly me, why am I sad? He's in heaven now. This is all part of God's plan. He's passed on. My personal favourite, the Lord called him home. Okay. I find these phrases unhelpful. You know what? I appreciate it. The person I lost may very well be in heaven. They may very well have passed on. They may very well be in a better place right now. And I'm believing that. Why not? What harm will it do me? And that gives me an enormous amount of hope. What's wrong with it? But you know what? But you know why all of this faux comfort doesn't reach me at all? Do you know what you're missing in your attempt to make me feel better? It's that from my perspective, here in the middle of my trauma, they died, and I'm missing them. And you know what? When they died, that was bad. I mean, really bad. But in the badness, at least there were things to do. Like there was a funeral to arrange. There were phone calls from friends. There were questionable casseroles from neighbours that I politely put in the bin but said thanks for anyway. There were formalities to be observed. But what came after all that, I find worse. It's that there's always an empty chair at the table. It's that when the phone rings, it's never them. It's that when a car pulls into the driveway, it's never going to be theirs. And to talk about death as though it were something other than death is to do a disservice both to ourselves and the Bible. The fact of the matter is that human experience confirms the biblical record, and the biblical record confirms the human experience. Life has episodes of extraordinary trauma. And the pain we feel is not imaginary, it is real. And to pretend otherwise is wicked. Then the woman carries on. She's not finished. She says, "From on high he sent fire, sent it down into my bones. He spread a net for my feet and turned me back. He made me desolate, faint, all the day long." You know, I like that she talks here about a net and a trap, because that's exactly what loss is like. You don't see it coming, and even if you do see it coming, it doesn't make it any easier. Loss is loss, is loss, is loss. And this woman is surely right to talk about that loss draining her energy, sucking the life out of her. Now, question to think about in this sentence. Look closely at it. Who is she blaming? Who's she pointing a finger at here? God. Oh. This is her accusation. He did this to me. Now that's horrible. But at least she's being honest. At least she's saying what she really feels. And I find that honesty, for all of its bluntness, more Christian than Christian platitudes that we sometimes resort to. this is all part of God's plan. I've actually heard people say that. It's all part of God's plan. How dare you? How dare you be so dumb? We have encyclopedias now and Google and everything. How can you be so stupid as to say a thing like that? I just lost someone. I'm dying here. And it was horrible. And it's been years and I'm still not over it. And if that I'm gone through is part of the God you believe in's plan, then your God is a twisted son of a bitch. I'm sorry. But the God I read about in the Bible by my bedside isn't really like that. And even if he is, he can cope with honesty. He can cope with you talking about life as life really is. And then she goes deeper into her feelings. My sins have been bound into a yoke. By his hands were they woven together. So now who's she blaming? In the previous sentence, she was pointing a finger at God. Now she's pointing a finger at herself. She seems to be saying, I've sowed some stuff and I've reaped some stuff. I've done things yesterday and now I'm experiencing things today. And what's brilliant about all of this, ugly though it is that of all of the people who speak in this ancient poem, God is never one of them. There are no answers. There are no explanations. It's just there. Not once does anyone show up with a handkerchief and say, there, Jesus will make it better. It's just incoherent agony. Is it God? Is it me? Is it my friends? What the fuck has happened? Where did my happiness go? How did my life end up in this pain? And the reason I think that's brilliant is because when it comes to grief of any kind, grief of every kind, we live in a culture of denial. If you were educated at any point in the last 100 years, which is 98% of you,
I hope so.
You were taught something hopeful but insidious. You were taught that what humans really need is time. Give us time and we'll figure it out. There's nothing we can't do. There's no problem we can't solve. We can fix everything. We can make everything better. We can get this thing sorted out. Just give us time. We'll sort everything out. Things are getting better. Our children will have it better. Their children will have it better. We've never known a world that hasn't said that to us. And from a certain point of view, that's a good thing to say, it's a good thing to believe, and it may even be a true thing to believe. And yet, for all of the truth of the notion, there is just enough killing and poverty and pollution and institutional evil in this world to give us pause. But we ignore the pause because we don't know what to do with pain. And you see this very much in church on Sunday mornings. All over North America, Christianity in its modern form, people gather together, and rarely is their individual or collective pain even referenced. Quite the contrary. Christians are fed a diet of triumphalism that makes a liar both of the Bible and of life. And consequently, we just don't know how to think about getting old. That in part explains our obsession as a culture with maintaining youthfulness. It in part explains things like Botox and health and fitness magazines. We don't know how to process aging. We're not good at facing up to the fact that we're getting older, and getting older sometimes sucks. We refuse to accept that the final chapters of life won't be happy and brilliant and carefree on a beach, but more likely something very different from that. We can't accept that the older we get, the more we lose, and the harder it sometimes becomes, and the more goodbyes we have to say, the closer we get to the exit. We just can't think about it, we don't think about it, we won't think about it. And the power of the lament is that it speaks the words the culture asks us to repress. The typical response to all of this is to banish it from our consciousness. But how many marriages do you know? How many friendships do you know? How many businesses do you know? How many families do you know that would be far better off if someone had the courage to stand up and say, guys, there's stuff we're not talking about, but we need to talk about it. There's something going on that we're all ignoring, but we need to talk about it. And the power of the lament is to speak the words that are repressed and getting it out. It's just good for you. It's just good for you. So, verse 16, she says, this is why I weep. Do you know those funerals you see on TV from the Middle East?
Yeah.
You know, where everyone's just bawling uncontrollably? Our Western mindset looks at that and considers it uncivilized, but I think they're onto something. They're repressing nothing, those people. They're getting it out. They're getting it out. This is why I weep. My eyes overflow with tears. No one is near to comfort me. No one to relieve my spirit. So in this poem, the woman has a pressing need. And it's not for things to go back the way they used to be. They can't. They never can. So the need that she mentions again and again and again in the poem is for someone to listen to her. That's all she wants. Someone to give her space to say, I am in pain. Do you know I hate... I'm Scottish, I hate lots of things. I hate rap music. I mean, can't stand it. It's just too loud, too angry, too many swears, too in your face, too aggressive. I hate everything about rap music. But when you poke a little bit into the culture from which rap music emerges, you begin to at least understand something of the anger. If I lived in a community where the cops were mistreating all my friends, where every home was a single-parent household, if there weren't enough jobs, where every day for everyone I ever knew was a struggle, and it felt like the system was permanently against me, you know what? I'd be angry too. And I'd shout. And if I felt you weren't listening, I'd shout louder. And I'd get angrier and angrier and angrier. This is the lament. I'm not okay. For you the world moves on, but for me it's stopped. And what I just need right now is someone to let me say, I am in pain. And I can't get past it. Lamentation names the thing that's wrong. It speaks the thing that stops us from being happy and thriving, and it exposes those conditions, and it's good for you. It's good for you. So this weird, ugly, unread, unpleasant part of the Bible isn't buying your fake positivity. It stares you down and says, you know what? There's pain in you. and you've never spoken it. There is an elephant in your soul, and you need to at least acknowledge it. Stop pushing it down. Because the sooner you accept reality and own the way you feel, is the sooner you take a step towards your own healing. Now, when I mention the word healing, let me be clear, that doesn't mean you get over it. I don't think you ever get over it. The fact is, when you go through a trauma in life, you go through it, you come out the other end, but you don't come out of it the same way. It changes you, and you stay changed. Life does not go on the same, but it does go on. Now, in church, I often teach you that God is the one who takes initiative in your life. I teach you that you did not choose God, but God chose you. And I'm right to teach you that. It is accurate. However, in the stories of the Bible, particularly the stories of Jesus, the laments are used to bring Jesus into the situation. So, for example, when a father loses his daughter, it is his expression of grief that brings Jesus to his home. And if there were no expression of grief, presumably Jesus would never have come. Large parts of the Gospels follow this pattern. Jesus responding to people's feelings of disassociation and grief and pain. And perhaps this is why so much of the Bible is a record of lament and pain. These complicated parts of the Bible call attention to the reality of loss without making any moral judgments whatsoever. And I assume they do so to give us a pattern that we ourselves are to follow in our own loss. Blanking out what you really feel is a lie that cannot be sustained. What we bury deep down comes out eventually. So you may as well get out into the open. You may as well be honest about how you really feel. God can handle it. You can handle it. And, forgive me for the presumption, the person you lost would wish for you to process things and be happy. They would wish that. Furthermore, and I mention this in church less often than I should, the reason why it is good to talk about death and dying and the loss of youth is because death clarifies things in a way that nothing else can. Those who've been through cancer understand this point very well. All of a sudden it hits you that life is amazing. And that every moment of it is to be enjoyed. Every day is to be lived. Every pleasure is to be grasped with both hands. The lamentation says to us loud and clear, there will come a day when we won't be here. And so while we are here, we should make the most of it and enjoy it. The lamentation says to us that there will come a day when we will miss today. The lamentation says to us loud and clear that we should never, ever put off till tomorrow what we can do and enjoy today. The lamentation says to us that not a one of us can say for sure we'll even be here tomorrow. And that should affect the way you drink every cup of coffee, the way you lie with your partner at night, the way you speak to your children, the way you phone your loved one. There's things you need to do today. There's pleasures you need to enjoy more today, knowing that a day will come when you won't be able to. Time for a quick question or two. No questions, good, because I got a ton of plans for today. Why are you laughing? I could have plans. Let's pray then, let's go. Our Father, we were reminded in your word this morning that we won't be here forever. We were reminded that life is a gift, that every moment of every day is special and precious, and that you, as the giver of that gift, wish for us to enjoy it, to take it with both hands and make everything of it that we can, to be grateful in every pleasure, to persevere in every trial, to be hopeful in every struggle. This morning, for a whole bunch of us, we could not help but think of that person we lost, of that grief we feel every single day. We hold on to our faith in these memories. We thank you that the love we felt for them was so real and so amazing, that the pain we feel today is so bitter. We see it as two sides of the same coin. Be with us then, in our happiness and in our sorrow, in our pleasure, in our pain, in our goings and in our comings. We ask this of you in Christ's name.